So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paweł Poszytek, and I represent the Foundation for the Development of Education System. And for those of you who have attended my workshop, today I just want to say that I will not repeat myself, except the little introduction about my institution. Obviously, there will be some links and connections, but I will be talking slightly about something different. So actually this presentation will be more generic than the one that I had during the workshop, which was very specific. So the title is How to Measure the Unmeasurable. My institution and myself very often have to face this problem. We are asked by different authorities to do such things. So let me first introduce my institution. So we were established in 1993. So it means that this year we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of our existence. And as you can see, the budget, annual budget of our institution is quite high. It's over $250 million. This is mostly European money. So we are the Polish institution established by our national authorities, by the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Higher Education and Science, because these are two different ministries. But actually, we were established to manage EU funds for education. So we get this money from European Union and we distribute it to different institutions and projects. We basically give grants to individual people for mobility, for students, for teachers, for higher education institutions, employees, and we also give the grants to institutions for interinstitutional cooperation between different European countries. In order to do it, we have to employ over 200 people. We have different divisions in our institutions. One of them is devoted to education, general education, the other one for higher education, also for education of adults. We also have a special department which was established 2 years ago, which deals with research. And altogether we run something like 11 international programs. All these programs, as I said, are devoted to, are destined to support different educational initiatives and projects. And the new, as I said, the new addition to our institution is the Department of Research, established more or less 2 years ago. And that's why, from time to time, from our authorities, by our authorities, we are asked to measure things which are very difficult or sometimes maybe even impossible to measure. So some time ago, we were asked to measure the range and the quality of the cooperation between academia and business. Why? Because in Europe now it is a hot issue. Probably it's important everywhere, but in Europe it is a hot issue because Europe is trying to catch up with the rest of the world in this race to be the most competitive and efficient as far as economy is concerned and educational systems. So in order to cater for this, in order to win in this race, first of all, you have to think about innovations and how academia, how universities contribute to this process, how they transfer innovations, skills, competences to business, and how business then uses this for the development. So the question, as you can see, what is the range and quality of academia-business cooperation is very difficult to answer because it's a very complex, multi-layered and multifaceted phenomenon. So in order to measure it, in order to describe it somehow, first we have to define this phenomenon. And in order to be precise, we have to define it via a set of parameters which are measurable and rateable. Otherwise, it won't tell us anything, at least not in precise terms. So first of all, this is a huge task to think and to gather all these possible parameters that can define and describe this phenomenon. So this is a very big challenge because we want this description to be true to life. We want it to be comprehensive, but at the same time, because as I said, the whole area is very complex, but at the same time we want the final answer to be easily presented to public and to decision makers, to policy makers. So it is a very difficult task. So actually, I'm not going to tell you how we did it because actually I talked about it during our workshop. So those of you who attended it now know more or less what I'm talking about. Those of you who haven't joined us for the workshop, later on we can also tell you something about this. But what I want to concentrate on is I want to concentrate on the methodology and the process, how we approach such research and how we approach such questions. So when we were asked a few months ago to research on this, and we were looking for some kind of reference or methodology, I just recollected that it was something like 10 years ago. We were asked by the European Commission, and it was not necessarily my institution, but I mean not my institution as it is now, but we as a group of certain experts, we were asked by the European Commission to answer the question, to what extent are European countries friendly to languages? It was also a very challenging task. So, and actually we, during that project, we arrived at certain results and we developed nice methodology. So I thought that it could be of some help in this new research. So in order to answer this question, we had a project called Language Rich Europe, and we constructed Language Rich Europe Index. This is a composite index, which means that it includes different areas of research, and within each individual area you've got a lot of different parameters. These parameters differ in nature, and at the same time to measure them you use entirely different techniques. So it is complex, it is multi-layered, it is multifaceted, and then you have to think how, out of this whole chaos, how to aggregate all the data and present them in a nice way. So I thought that it was worth to refer to this project and use some of the elements from its methodology. So this is just a hint. It's not the list of all the parameters, but within this Language Rich Europe Index, we thought that we should research within 5 main domains. The first one, legislation. For example, we wanted to check if individual countries in Europe, if they adhere to certain recommendations and resolutions, like for example, if they sign certain conventions about the rights for minority languages, regional languages, and so on and so on. Easy thing, because you have the list of those recommendations and conventions, and you just tick if they adhere or not, if they have it in their legislation or not. Slightly more difficult task was in the other domain, languages at school. We had to research how languages are treated at schools in individual European countries, how they are taught, how they are learned, what are the provisions, how many hours spent on languages, what is the methodology, what are didactic materials, and so on and so on. More or less the same thing with languages at higher education. And as you can see, there are some examples of the measurable and rateable parameters, but actually within each domain we had something like dozens of different parameters. So altogether within those 5 domains we had over 200 different parameters, measurable parameters. And then languages and society, for example, we looked at how languages function in different societies in individual countries. For example, if you are a foreigner, if you come from UK to Poland, for example, if you can survive, which means that, for example, if you approach a policeman, if you can communicate with him or her, if you buy a ticket and you approach a ticket machine when you use the public transport system, if the machine can talk to you in languages, and so on and so on. So still a very long list of different things and parameters. And languages in the media. For example, if the films are dubbed or not, and if you can, if different languages are present on TV, and so on and so on. So as you can see, some of the parameters require simple desk research. You just have a checklist, you check if something is there or not. For some of the areas you have to carry out field research. Sometimes you have hard data which can be found, but sometimes you can only refer to examples of good practice. And some of those things are of qualitative nature, and some of them of quantitative nature. So as you can see, so there is a big chaos in it, and the whole thing, the whole fun about this is to be sure that this list of all those measurable and rateable parameters is a full list, and it represents the phenomenon which you want to measure. So by analogy, we also define this area or this phenomenon, which is, as I said, the range and the quality of the cooperation between academia and business. We presented it during the workshop, so I'm not presenting it here, just not to repeat myself, but more or less the idea was the same. And within this research about cooperation between academia and the universities and business, we also have 5 domains and dozens of parameters within each domain. So altogether, if I remember well, we have something like 100, Mateusz, help me, 180 parameters. Quite a lot. We still do not know if we can gather all the data with the use of those parameters. Now we are in a pilot phase, and we are piloting the tool in Poland with in several universities, but also we managed to persuade Turkey, Kazakhstan to carry out the same research as well, according to our guidelines. And our partner institution from the Netherlands is also willing to participate. So we are trying also to proliferate this tool. Why is this kind of proliferation important for us? Why we don't want to keep it only for ourselves and to be specific only to our country? Because, as I said, the other important aspect of this is how you present the data, to be sure that it is understood by general public and by politicians, by policymakers, but also there is another dimension to it, how you compare to other countries. So within as I said, within each domain, whatever research is, we have different parameters. And here you have the example of the country profile of country X. As you can see, this country in the first domain, like for example with this Language Rich Europe project, it was legislation. It adheres almost in 100% to all the conventions, recommendations, and so on. So it means that it scores quite high. But as far as the other domain is concerned, let's say it was languages at schools, it does not score that high because maybe it does not have good methodology or good materials and so on. And you have the scores we presented with the use of the spider graph. You present the scores of the country. So this is, some people say that it's not a good method because you rank the countries, and in Europe, nobody likes rankings. In Europe, we say that we prefer cooperation, exchange of examples of good practice. What works very well in one country does not have to work well in the other country because we are, we have different, there are huge varieties within Europe. So they say that ranking is not good. But this system is, we think that it's very useful because if you look at the results of two countries, of country X and country Y, it's not to rank them, it's not to compare them in this negative sense, but actually this system can foster cooperation and exchange of good practice, because you say, okay, you are better than us within domain 1, but we are better in domain 2. So let's talk, let's exchange the experience, let's exchange the views. So that's why we think that this system, on the one hand, is very good, as I said, to present the results to the public and to policymakers, to politicians, because this is the easy way and they can understand it easily. Also from the point of view of marketing, within the media, it's quite useful. And on the other hand, you can also foster cooperation between countries and encourage them to talk. And in Europe, it is actually very important for us because otherwise we disintegrate somehow. So this is one of the reasons why within different fields we have to cooperate if we want to keep the continent together. So we come back to this question: what is the range and quality of academia and business cooperation? And I've just told you how we are approaching this, but actually from the methodological point of view, we have a lot of questions and problems and challenges we have to address. So first of all, theoretical framework. So as I said in the beginning, our biggest concern is how to operationalize this phenomenon. So how to create this comprehensive list of parameters which define the thing that we want to measure in a proper way. So if we operationalize in a good way, if we had a good set of parameters, if we can measure them, then we achieve construct validity. So as I said, it includes the selection and the choice of proper domains, and then the insight in what can be measurable within each of the domain. So we have the parameters, we have also sub-parameters, and then we think about the best method to measure. And as I said again, it may turn out that different domains can be measured, must be measured in a different way, or even within each domain, different parameters will be measured in a different way. So data selection is very important here, because obviously we can think of a very nice theoretical model, but the question is, at the end of the day, if all the data actually can be can be collected. And if we make those comparisons between countries, it also turns out very often that certain data which can be collected in one country, actually it is not accessible in the other one. The next challenge is multivariate analysis. So we also have to be very careful about the structure of the parameters that we have. Suitability of the data is very important, because what we have here is validity issues which have been already mentioned, but we have actually two types of validity here. So first one is internal validity, which concerns this theoretical framework. So if we have a nice set of parameters, we can claim that that we have internal validity of the tool, but it also has to be valid externally, because usually it turns out that some of those parameters are already measured somehow with other tools. And obviously, because the task is very huge, so we do not want to repeat something which has already been done. So if we find out that, for example, some reliable and valid data already exists, then we make use of it. So that's why our index is called Composite Index, because on the one hand, it's very complex, but at the same time, we are open to use the data which already exists. And if somebody, for example, or an institution runs a ranking or collects the data and it is reliable, we use it. So in other words, we do not want our measurement to be somehow entirely different from similar measurements if some fragments of them already exist on the market. We have to face the problems of missing data. As I said, it may turn out that certain data cannot be collected, and very often the data exists, but we cannot retrieve it because it is sensitive. In our case, when you look at this set of parameters, many of them refer to finance, which is spent on the cooperation between universities and business. And this is very sensitive data. We encounter problems here because some of the universities do not want to say how much they spent on different things. But we use different tricks and tools. Sometimes we sign the contract with them that we are not going to dispose this kind of data to third parties. And we also cooperate with Citibank, which actually Citibank handles all our financial operations, and they also, at least in our country, they handle a lot of operations between universities and business, so they also have some data. So they help us and they give us some hints what we can ask for when we approach universities. And we also know from them that they also finance a lot of projects between universities and businesses in other countries as well. So when we go beyond, with this research beyond our country, maybe we can cooperate with them on a broader scale. Then the next challenge is normalization of data. So as I already showed you, we are using the spider graph to present it. We have to have a kind of a vehicle to present the data, and in such a way that even general public can understand it, not only the experts. The other challenge is weighting and aggregation of data, because with this whole set of parameters, obviously we can easily imagine that some of them are important, but some of them maybe are more important than the others. So we have to make a certain weighing and then to aggregate it. Obviously, this is a kind of subjective exercise, but in order to make it more objective, we are using a panel of experts, and it's like a brainstorm, and we ask them. These are usually university professors, rectors, and deans, and we are asking them how they think we should weigh different parameters, and for example, how many points attached to different parameters. I remember just an anecdote, but I remember when we were carrying out this language-rich project, and within the first domain and this legislation area, there was a point that if the country signed the convention, Council of Europe's convention for minority and regional languages, and the country uses it, and there are examples of good practice, it gets 4 points. And one of the countries, I won't tell you which one, said, asked us, the scientific panel, why is our score 0 in this parameter? And the answer was very simple. Your score is 0 because you haven't signed the convention. And they said, yes, we haven't signed the convention, but we agree with this convention, and we support it, and we like it very much. So please give us 4 points. So, and actually, the Prime Minister of this country was involved in the discussion as well. So these are the funny things that go around. But actually, this is a very serious and very challenging and difficult task to weigh and aggregate the results. Obviously, we need to put all the efforts to achieve robustness and of the whole thing. It must be robust, but at the same time, we are also aware that sometimes certain issues may be sensitive for different reasons, which I have already mentioned. And the last point is the links to other variables. So we have to be aware if similar tasks or similar exercises or researches are carried out somewhere else, and sometimes, if possible, use the results from those from that research, or maybe to apply totally different methodological model. Similar exercise, but on a much smaller scale, was carried out by the European Commission in 2013. European Commission prepared the reports for individual countries how this cooperation between universities and business, how it looks like. And there was also a report for Poland. We are not satisfied with the methodological model they have. For example, this model lacks, it is based, in most cases, it is based on hard data, like, for example, the number of patents introduced, or the amount of money spent. We also do it, but what is lacking here, and we would like to develop further on this, is the whole area of competences. How competences are developed within in the academia, and how they transferred to business. Because some of the experts say that what's most valuable, most important, is actually what's in the heads of people who are transferred from academia to business. We are talking about innovations here and creativity. That's what's most valuable. And at the same time, as you may imagine, this is the thing which is the most difficult to measure. So these are, just in short, the time is up, and the challenges and the problems that we face. But as I said, we are already in a phase of piloting the tool. So, and now we are at the stage that we are quite convinced that actually it is possible to do. Although a few months ago we were not that sure. And we are also convincing other countries, other partners to participate. So we don't know what will be the final result of the project and how it is going to be developed further on, but at least at this stage we are quite happy, because now we can say to our authorities that, okay, you asked us about something impossible, but maybe we will deliver something. In Poland we say, when your authorities ask you about something impossible, usually we have to deliver it very immediately. But when they ask you for miracles, then we say, okay, but you have to wait a while. So they have been waiting for several months, and now at least we can answer that, well, hopefully we can do something about this. Thank you very much.